Hi, good afternoon. As you have seen, the Security Council is currently meeting on Ukraine. The Undersecretary General for Political Affairs, Rosemary Di Carlo, just briefed the members. She said that a regrettable security incident took place yesterday in Crimea involving 3 Ukrainian vessels and 1 Russian vessel near the Kerch Straits. As she noted, Ukrainian and Russian accounts of that incident. Ms. Di Carlo reiterated the UN's call for all parties to avoid unilateral steps. Regrettably, she said, yesterday's incident only causes the tensions to deteriorate further. At this juncture, she said, the immediate de-escalation of tensions in the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea is required. Excuse me. On Syria, I would like to reiterate something we said over the weekend, that the Secretary General is following very closely the reports of alleged use of chemical weapons in Aleppo against civilians. Any confirmed use of such weapons by any party in the conflict under any circumstances is abhorrent and a clear violation of international law. Meanwhile, today, a report on children armed conflict in Syria says the parties to the conflict in that country exhibited a blatant disregard for the life and fundamental rights of children. The report documents grave violations committed against boys and girls between November 16th of 2013 and the end of June of 2018. The report describes deeply disturbing violence against children committed in a climate of widespread impunity, said Virginia Gamba, the Secretary General's Special Representative for Children in Armed Conflict. And that report is now available to you. And on Somalia, the Secretary General's Special Representative there, Nicholas Haysom, strongly condemned the terrorist attacks in the city of Galkayo and in the Somali capital Mogadishu, which killed a prominent cleric and a number of other civilians. Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the early morning attack on a compound belonging to cleric Abdiweli al-Ilmi of Galkayo. Later in the early afternoon, a car bomb reportedly detonated in a busy market in Mogadishu. In a statement, Mr. Haysom extended his condolences to the bereaved and said the UN stands with the people and government of Somalia in their rejection of terrorism. The full statement is available on the UN website. And Martin Griffiths, the Special Envoy for Yemen, is in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia today, where he's meeting with Yemeni government officials to prepare consultations with the parties. You will recall that in a visit to the port of Hodeidah in Yemen on Friday, Mr. Griffiths welcomed the recent calls for a halt of the fighting in Hodeidah. This is an essential step if we are to protect the lives of civilians and build confidence amongst the parties, he said. On Thursday in Sana'a, the Special Envoy had talked with Ansarallah leadership about how the UN could contribute to keeping the peace in Hodeidah, and they agreed the UN should now pursue actively and urgently detailed negotiations for a leading UN role in the port and more broadly. And our colleagues at the World Health Organization report that the Ministry of Health in the Democratic Republic of the Congo announced today that a trial had begun to evaluate the effectiveness and safety of drugs used in the treatment of Ebola. This is the first ever multi-drug trial for an Ebola treatment. In a statement, the Director General of the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros, said that while the focus remained on bringing an end to the ongoing Ebola outbreak in North Kivu province, the new trial is an important step forward in finding the treatment for Ebola that will save lives. More details on the agency's website. And the UN and the international and local humanitarian partners in Iraq, including the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement and the Iraqi Red Crescent, have joined the government of Iraq's specialized agencies in providing support for tens of thousands of victims of the severe flooding which swept many areas of Saladin and Nineveh governorates on the 22nd, 23rd of November. And turning to Venezuela, the UN Children's Fund said that since August it had flown in nearly 130 tons of medicine, health, and nutrition supplies for 350,000 women and children. The supplies will boost government efforts to alleviate the impact of economic crisis on the most vulnerable. The supplies are in part an agreement with government to expand UNICEF's programs in the country, including through technical cooperation and capacity building. UNICEF has delivered 100 tons of nutritional supplies for 150,000 children, including food for the treatment of malnutrition and deworming and water purification tablets. The agency also provided 30 tons of medicine and health supplies that will be used in the treatment and care for 25,000 pregnant women, 10,000 newborn and neonatal wards, and more than 2,300 children living with HIV. And a study released today by the UN Office of Drugs and Crime said that out of 87,000 women that were killed around the world last year, some 50,000, that's 58% of them, were killed by their partners or a member of their own family. This amounts to 6 women being killed every hour by people they know. The study, which was released for the International Day of the Elimination of Violence Against Women, found that Africa and the Americas are the regions where women are most at risk of being killed by intimate partners or family members. This was followed by Oceania and Asia. The lowest rate was found in Europe. And on Sunday, the UN kicked off its 16 days of activism to end gender-based violence. In a tweet, the Secretary General encouraged the public to speak out and take action. And the heads of the UN Development Program, UNICEF, UN Women, and UN Population Fund also issued statements calling for solidarity with survivors and survivor advocates and women's rights, human rights defenders who are all working to prevent and to end violence against women and girls. More information online. Don't worry, I'll get to you. Our colleagues from the International Labour Organization today released a report that says that global wage growth last year fell to its lowest rate since 2008, far below the levels before the global financial crisis. The Global Wage Report, as it is entitled, found that the global wage growth declined 1.8% in 2017 from 2.4% in 2016. The findings are based on data from 136 countries. The report also found that globally women continue to be paid approximately 20% less than men. In high-income countries, it is at the high end of the pay scale that the gender pay gap is wider, while in low and middle-income countries, the gender pay gap is wider amongst lower-paid workers. And you can find the full report online. And last night, we issued a statement in which the Secretary General condemned the recurrent attacks in Nigeria by terrorists and other extremist groups in the northern part of the country. He said these were causing heavy casualties among the civilian population, the security forces, and disrupting normal life. Secretary General added that those who violate international humanitarian, human rights, and refugee law must be held accountable, and that the United Nations stands in solidarity with the government and people in Nigeria in the fight against terrorism and violent extremism. And after we are done, I will be joined by Jorge Chediek, who is the head of office and the envoy of the Secretary General in South-South cooperation. He'll be here to brief you on the upcoming expo, which I believe opens Wednesday. Mademoiselle.
Thank you a lot. Obviously, I'm going to ask about official position of Secretary General in nearest news in Ukraine and position about new act of aggression now in sea territory. Is there any statement available already? And could we wait for more further steps which could push on Russia more hardly?
Well, you know, I think Ms. Rosemary Di Carlo expressed the opinion of the Secretariat. She just briefed the Security Council. We're obviously all very deeply concerned about the tensions and the broader context of the conflict in eastern Ukraine and the annexation of Crimea. And we would wish to reiterate our call for renewed and constructive action by all concerned to overcome the apparent impasse on the diplomatic negotiations. But Ms. Di Carlo spoke on behalf of the Secretariat and very clearly to that. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Also, I'm on the same topic, Ukraine. It seems that though everything is falling apart and that the country is ready to go on war footing, what is it?
Where is everything falling apart? Sorry.
What's that?
Where is everything falling apart? Where is everything falling apart?
In Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
In Ukraine. What is happening in Ukraine and with this Russian, interventions and so forth. So what is it that the Secretary General is doing to somehow bring the situation from the boiling situation down? Is the Secretary General making any efforts to go to?
You know, obviously, the Secretary General is on a plane on his way back to New York as we speak. He is being fully briefed on the situation. Contacts are being had at various levels. But again, I would urge you to look back to what Ms. Di Carlo said, and I think she explained it in a way that's much clearer than I can. Yes, madam. And then I'll come to you.
Thank you, Stéphane. Today is the 10th anniversary of the Mumbai terror attacks that conducted by Pakistani terrorists. Does the SG have any message for that? And also, the U.S. announced another $5 million for information on those who carried out these attacks because they are still at large. Any comment on that?
Well,
as well?
you know, as a matter of principle, we always believe that those who are responsible for violence, random violence, for acts of terrorism, should be brought to justice. Yes, Carla.
Thank you, Stéphane. I was a little bit nonplussed by the statistic you gave. Did you actually say 58% of the women that are killed are in domestic situations?
What I said is 58% of the women who were killed, if I recall properly what I just said, over the last year, that's 50,000, were killed by partners or a member of their own family. Yes, madam.
Following up on Carla's question, since 58% were killed by partners or family, whoever, what about the other 42%? Is there a sense of, were they killed just in burglaries, in war, by terrorists?
It was, from what I understand, and we'd have to look at the report, it was women. This was gender-based violence. This was violence targeting women outside of the home. Do you want to be brief? Okay, so we'll go to Monica, and then please stay for our guests. Thank you.